Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the online forum to discuss Thomas Hobbes' idea. The objective of this forum would be to evaluate Thomas Hobbes' ideas, which are bad nature, absolute monarchy, limited liberty, and seditious doctrines. This forum invited 4 panelists, Qi Hui, Chu En, Pei Ling, and Wei Hung, to give their opinions based on this topic. Without further ado, let us proceed with the introductions of Thomas Hobbes.
Greetings to all. Now I would like to give some introduction about Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes was born in Malmesbury, a town located in Wiltshire, England, on April 5, 1588. Thomas Hobbes was an English philosopher with many interests in political philosophy. He supported materialist, nominalist, and empiricist positions in opposition to Cartesian and Aristotelian alternatives. According to Thomas Hobbes' ideal, humans can grow in concord while avoiding the danger and terror of societal conflict. The most famous work by Thomas Hobbes is Leviathan, in which he outlines an influential idea of the social contract. At the age of 15, Thomas Hobbes attended Magdalen Hall at Oxford University. He studied physics and Aristotelian logic, developed an interest in maps while spending his free time at school. William Cavendish, the future heir of Devonshire, hired Hobbes as his tutor in 1608. Thomas Hobbes' benefactors would remain the Cavendish family for the rest of his life. However, after the death of Cavendish, Hobbes went on to teach Cavendish's sons. The astronomer Galileo Galilei and philosopher René Descartes were among the luminaries he met on his additional trips to Europe. As civil war outbrew in England in 1640, Royalist Thomas Hobbes fled to Paris with his family. Leviathan was published after 11 years in 1651, and it making one of Thomas Hobbes' famous and well-known masterpieces. Thomas Hobbes believed that a monarchy was the most refined form of government. Since sovereignty has absolute power, the sovereign must also be supreme spiritual authority in a country religion. As a result, he was agnostic about the Catholic Church.
Good day to everyone. I'm panelist 1, Khoo Qi Hui. I would like to talk about the man's bad nature of Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes is one famous English philosopher who holds a pessimistic idea about humanity. This was mainly because of his upbringing background of being domestic violence and abandoned by his father. In addition, he also witnessed the English Civil War. One famous phrase Hobbes described man was, "Life of man are solitary, nasty, brutish, and also short." Thomas Hobbes began his political philosophy by talking about the state of nature. The state of nature is state of no government. So Thomas Hobbes thinks that such a state without any government, and there will be 3 essential elements, which are competition, distrust, and struggle for glory. Thomas Hobbes thinks that all these together would lead to a war of all against all. According to Thomas Hobbes, he believed that all men are equal when it comes to survival. Instead of nature, this equal capacity to kill each other breeds distrust. Because there is no more substantial power to prevent someone from attacking man, all of man's goods as well as man's life would be seized at any time. For Thomas Hobbes, humans are like machines, are always pursuing for their own interests, evading pain, and pursuing for pleasure. Hence, to conclude that the idea of Hobbes in man's nature, humans are naturally egocentric, and as a result, they attempt to dominate others and command their admiration. The state of nature of man is a state of war in which existence is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Because of this, man is engaged in a war of all against all, in which that man would do anything harmful to others to ensure their security and self-interest. That's all from me. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I'm Lim Chu En with 279103, being a panelist 2 will evaluate the idea of absolute monarchy. Absolute monarchy is kind of government form that a leader of country ruling in power completely. It became important for the community to lead people to move forward and manage the country successfully. The country implemented an absolute monarchy that representative that had no three branches of their government: executive, judiciary, and legislature. The absolute monarchy has started in 16th century in Western countries such as King Louis XIV with the slogan, "I am the state," because he thought that all the power held by God were bestowed through him for saturation. Thus, the king did not listen to others' opinion but was a decision maker by his own. People against the king's order will only gain the crucial result, execute to die. Thomas Hobbes still believed absolute monarchy for the right of the king is the only right and genuine choice. As a strong argument for standing, he showed his point to prove from his lecture, Leviathan. He experienced the English Civil War that inspired him to create and firmly believed that any such conflict leads to war. He deemed that the sovereign had power in the regime, including legal system and principle, to keep peace in the community. Yet, still, some countries maintain absolute monarchies, such as Saudi Arabia and Oman. He believed in the social contract theory that every human being has the right and freedom to make decisions. People are selfish and self-centered, and it is important to self-interest rather than obey the natural set to avoid brutality. That became a primary reason why Hobbes believed and supported the absolute monarchy. But John Locke has opposed the stand of Hobbes, that he has involved in Hobbes' world that agreed the natural rights in life, in property, and so on. In contrast to those who present the man on natural excellence and prospection in living in peace and following their conscience alone, Hobbes believed that men could review and compile their morality. The government would not exist because they would not have needed. Indeed, it exists demonstrations that people cannot live in harmony without a common authority to hold them all in mind. The absolute monarch is unable to fully regulate the decision of the interest of peace and security. As mentioned before, the sinner's life could be threatened, even executed due to the compulsory obey for the king. A monarch is free to be a decision maker, even considering their capricious. Third, an absolute monarch also is described as a tyrant. However, in Hobbes' thought, monarchy absolutism was people whose voluntary belief and empower a man of a government in power to act. Therefore, absolute monarchy is neither, even if it is categorized as totalitarian and use power to satisfy their desire to control, like saying, a never-ending and relentless yearning for power after power that ending only with death. But it is stable and more accessible for the head of government to decide and legislate the law regarding the current situation quickly.
My name is Pei Ling. Now I would like to have a discussion on the idea of limited liberty. The notion of freedom shows Hobbes' essential contribution to political anthropology. The development of his philosophical materialism in the 1640s century was critical to the social evolution of the new era. His idea of freedom represented a significant growth and change in his moral and civic philosophies. Hobbes contended that there were two sorts of individual liberty in the Union. Legal liberty is defined as that which is not banned by law, and the subject's real liberty is defined as those activities required by law but which the issue is unable to accomplish. The denied freedom as limited liberty is stated in the elements of law as a person or slave who is free to choose whether or not to execute a particular act or duty. Yet, in this Civ, which was written by Hobbes in 1642, freedom is described as a person who has the freedom to choose not to perform it. This can be explained by Hobbes' explicit usage of freedom to suffer as freedom to do or not to do in this context, which was said that freedom can be limited by human choice. The idea is that while a contract is a future conversation, responsibility begins when freedom stops and becomes obligatory at the end of discussion. Hobbes advances a highly contentious assertion concerning legal liberty. He claimed that rulers might execute innocent citizens without causing them harm. He also contended that all states should have the same stance on individual liberty. True liberty meant that a subject could do something even if the law prohibited it. Hobbes appears to have offered a different foundation of contractual responsibilities than complying with contracts under natural law, owing to the more humanitarian nature of such rules. His plan covers the safeguarding of human life. All males had the right to reject punishment, refuse to testify in court, and refuse to execute dangerous or dishonorable responsibility, such as entering the army or prolonging a civil war. As Warrender discovered in this Save, freedom is inferred as a property of nature, similar to an aspect of the law, but is clearly stated by Hobbes as one of the essential notions of his whole political system. As a result, freedom is compelled to transform the hazardous liberty of the people into an uncivilized state of nature, unsuited to the natural disorderly movements of politics and the order trends that characterize these political rights. As depicted in this Save, these two human movements are in a condition of tension. This is due to Hobbes' monistic materialism's inability to accept that they belong to separate ontological regions. Human freedom must be described as one of the factors that coincides with the actual creation of an aspect of the polis theoretical construction. Hood may be the first to expressly explain that Hobbes' idea of freedom to do or not to do is dependent on the notion bodily freedom in the proper sense. While arguing that Hobbes' conceptual development, Hood is inevitably drawn to the anomaly of the definition of human freedom in terms of the absolute absence of arbitrary barriers, with explicit reference to the possibility of implicitly acknowledging that chance may also play a role in the process. Theoretical reasoning and political objectives are linked in Skinner, a behaviorist thinker for a larger argument. Skinner views Hobbes' political theory developing in the 1640th century as a road marked by his own political agenda as a strategic defense of authoritarianism against republican notions of liberty. Hobbes' eventual renunciation of his ambition to produce a politically legitimate citizenship science characterized this approach. In his three political treatises, Hobbes reinvented the notion of liberty. Initially, freedom was described in terms of legal governance and limitations. In other words, natural liberty was present in the element of the law. It took dangerously behind the scenes in the political system. In fact, Jackson emphasizes the staggering lack of fresh thoughts on the concept of liberty in his literature, as he found that many scholars have concluded that Hobbes was to explain the nature of the physical body and was aimed to provide a systematic and implicit basis of a new conception of freedom that lent itself to bring out the political risk of human nature into a broader explanation.
So, a very good day everyone. My name is Phung Wei Hung, and also the last panelist to discuss about the Thomas Hobbes idea. And the topic I'm going to evaluate is about the idea of seditious doctrine. Without further ado, let us proceed with the main point. Leviathan, one of the masterpieces of Thomas Hobbes, is the theoretical framework of modern national political order. According to Hobbes, the best form of government is a monarchy with unified authority where the sovereign rights are supreme and absolute. In order to maintain peace and security, people must deny their rights to self-protection and obey sovereign protection. Specifically, sovereignty must have coercive power in three aspects: the power to control thoughts and freedom theory, complete legislative ability to maintain its authority, and judicial right to maintain peace and security. Leviathan stated that the sovereign's authority lies in using all means to preserve peace and stability, like controlling speech and making religion under secular sovereignty. This also means that anyone who comes up with statements or addresses against the existing order is prohibited. Thomas Hobbes is not a supporter of free speech or press freedom. Hobbes believed that the sovereign should have the absolute right to censor hazardous ideas to maintain peace and avert civil conflicts. The primary purpose of his work is to denounce the corruption of the church and construct leviathans to stop civil war and chaos caused by religion. In Hobbes' time, the functions and duties of the state has already appeared conceptually. Due to the fright of dying caused by civil war and religious war, he desired to build a new state outside religion and endow Leviathan with the unique legitimacy of political power. Hobbes' sovereigns are not absolutists, and the goal of sovereignty is to safeguard local peace and personal security. The absolute power of authority is authorized based on the social contract established by the people. Hobbes' starting point and end point of constructing the modern political system are free and equal individuals. People get along harmoniously in a state which only with one absolute authority. The scope and intensity of protections and obedience provided by the state are different under different forms of government. There may be some conflict between the dual absoluteness of national sovereignty and the freedom of subjects. Once the absoluteness of sovereignty is transformed into administrative power of political rule, it will lead to the absoluteness of foreign power, which will infringe on individual freedom. This shows that absolute power of sovereign might damage the freedom. To achieve self-preservation, people may evade or even resist the laws and orders of the sovereign, which will damage the legitimacy basis of sovereignty. After that, John Locke only tried to solve this problem in the Second Treatise of Government. Locke expounded the division and checks and balance between powers and gave sovereignty to the people who built the contract and governance, the legislative power and judicial power. Meanwhile, Montesquieu also designed the distributions and operation of national sovereign power from the legal point of view in the spirit of the law and created the separations and balance of legislative, executive, and judicial powers. Well, Hobbes' political theory sparked significant debate in his day, and they continue to do so now. Some people might disagree with Hobbes' notions that politics should be viewed only as a vehicle for advancing one's interests, and endorse Aristotle's view that politics serve basic needs and higher purpose. Hobbes' theory provides an entirely different perspective from classical political theory for later generations to understand politics, and approaching making contributions of Hobbes' view. Hobbes' theoretical constructions of modern political order provided a solid ideological foundation for developing later political theories, such as the exercise of political power and the design of a check and balance system. In conclusion, the innovations of every part of its theory are enough to attract the attention of different readers.